I think there's probably just an epilogue. Wait, what? My head was pounding. The sky was bright. It was cold, too. It hurt. Each sensation I felt led to a new and different one awakening. When I came to, I was lying face first on a dry riverbed. A few body parts hurt a lot. The skin over a bunch of my joints was turned blue or red or oozing blood. I could tell it was my bones that were in pain from the agony I felt whenever I moved. I looked up and saw how high the bridge from which I had fallen. Considering I dropped from there, it was a miracle I could open my eyes. Right next to me was a broken, upside-down car seat, which I guess some prankster had brought here. Maybe this thing had conveniently lying right under me, allowing me to escape instant death. Miraculous. Of course, I didn't know whether this miracle was fortunate or unfortunate. I'd failed to die, and now was still stuck in this insane world. How long had I been unconscious? The sun was high in the sky, so it looked like only 2 hours had passed. But my body's sluggishness didn't make it feel at all like such a short time had passed. Mentally, it felt like I'd been asleep here for a decade. The more feeling returned to my body, the more pain flooded in. It hurt so much it would have been better to not woken up. I needed to get to a doctor. Yeah, coaches. The term coach brought back memories one after another. Memories I wish I hadn't recalled. Satoko was no longer on the bridge. She would have returned to Hinamizawa by now. And she'd put on some clothes, go get a clinic, and report on how crazy I seemed. The police were waiting for me without a doubt. This time, would they find out for real that I'd killed her uncle and arrested me? Or would they just send me to a mental institution like I thought they might? Still, I didn't care which one it was. Please, someone stop this. You can boil me, cook me, whatever you want. I began to walk, just limping along. I went downstream and then through an animal trail-like path in the woods. I walked haphazardly, searching for a path I knew. Eventually, I finally came across a familiar road and sent off towards the clinic. Not to my house, but to the clinic, which had treated me like a lunatic. It was hot and humid. There was no wind, and the air was stagnant. For a while now, I had been smelling the terrible stench of burned eggs. Demons. Sulfur. And it made my face scrunch. And then, at last, I noticed something. I couldn't hear any cicadas. It was like the first time I'd heard Hinamizawa been so utterly silent. When I thought back, it seemed like birds always chirped in the morning. Cicadas always cried loudly in the afternoon. And Higurashi always rose up in the chorus in the evening. Always something to hear. I couldn't hear a single insect. The only thing I could hear was the rustling of the wind brushing the treetops. I'd never experienced this sort of quiet before. Even the only sound coming from the trees lacked life somehow. The trees were yellow, and many leaves were spread on the ground despite it being too early for autumn. Even the weeds that had been growing so persistently at the side of the road had yellowed and lost their vigor. Only the sunlight itself was the June of the Hinamizawa I knew, and yet it seemed like the seasons had switched all of a sudden. Looking at the fallen leaves and rotted weeds led me to a spot a few small insects turned on their backs. They weren't moving. They were corpses. I looked closer to see insect corpses scattered all around, like a child had collected them as samples and then strewing them about. This stench, what was it? It was terrible, like burned eggs, sulfur, which is demon. Combined with all the bud corpses and leaves falling from the trees in summer. Had someone sprayed herbicides or pesticides? Even at school, we apparently fumigate, they call it pest disinfection or something, once or twice a year. I hadn't run into anybody, despite how bright it was. It was mid-afternoon, and yet it felt like I was sauntering about at midnight. Well, with this smell, no one would want to be walking around outside. Just what was this anyway? There was no sound, no noise, not even a breath. Hinamizawa was silent. The school would come into view right after turning this corner, and yet I couldn't hear anything. None of the shouts or grunts that children always made. It was simply quiet. Just as pretending to ignore the silence had grown intolerable, I saw the school. And finally, I heard something. It was the sound of a few trucks. There were a few very tall trucks parked in the schoolyard, idling. About 10 workers in raincoats were unloading things from their trunks. It was hot and humid, even in my casual clothing. I couldn't imagine how unbearable that must have been. And then I remembered. Our school was rented from the Forest Service field office building, wasn't it? It wasn't strange at all for Forest Service trucks to be doing some kind of work in the schoolyard. Besides, what did Forest Rangers do anyway? I felt bad for them having to work in such heat and with such a stench. They were taking colorful cargo out of the trunk and lining it up in the schoolyard. There were containers, fairly large ones, inside multicolored patchwork bags. Heavy, too. They were being carried in pairs. They lined them up very neatly, like tuna at a riverside fish market. Several dozens, hundreds of tuna were completely filling the fairly wide schoolyard up. I forgot my pain for a little while, captivated by this big forest ranger job I'd never seen before. As I stood there, watching in daze, the people in raincoats working on the other side noticed me. One of them pointed me out and shouted a few things back and forth. I thought they might yell at me for getting in their way, so I decided to leave. But then, 2 trucks drove up behind me. I stepped aside as they entered the schoolyard. Sheets covered their trucks, but I could tell they were completely full. As they passed, there was an awful smell that made me want to choke. It wasn't the same burned egg smell as before, but an even worse one, like rotten crab meat. What on earth was it? I'd been enshrouded in one terrible stench after another all day. Then, certain white letters emblazoned on the side of the passing trucks caught my eye. Ground Self-Defense Forces. What? Self-defense forces? Like the army? Why was the army in the schoolyard? Hey, you! Where did you come from? Suddenly, someone slapped me on the shoulders from behind. I turned around and a Canopy STV Jeep was parked there. The STF person had on a green raincoat and a gas mask like in the movies, carrying a compressed air cylinder. He didn't look normal. There wasn't an inch of exposed skin anywhere. Where did I... Ow. When I tried to talk, I stretched a wound on my head. It made the STF people exchange glances. I couldn't see their faces through their masks, but they seemed surprised. Do you live here? Can you tell us your name and address? Well, yeah, I sort of live here. My name is Maibara Keichi, and my address... Hinamizawa Village, Shibone. After seeing me tell them my name and address without hesitation, one of the SDF people watching from the Jeep started talking into a radio. Base, do you read? Base, do you read? We have a 402 survivor discovered. Oh. Wow. Oh. Ah. It really is him in a coma/dream, isn't it? Fucking fuck. Ugh. We have a 402 survivor discovered. I repeat, we have a 402 we found a survivor. He's in front of the Forest Service office. This is base. We copy. Secure the survivor at once. What is his status? Healthy. Wounded all over, but not fatally. He can walk on his own. We'll send him to HQ for safety. I was prepared to go along with the police, but the SDF? I couldn't help but think it seemed a little bit much. They urged me into the back of the Jeep, and then they told me to put on this gigantic gas mask. I did so, and one of the troops fiddled around with it, strapping it tightly to me. It was heavy, hard to see out of, hot, and difficult to breathe. Just looking at the world through the lenses made it lose its sense of reality. My breathing sounded like some giant monster through the mask. At this point, I had no idea what was happening. With much trepidation, I asked the trooper adjusting my mask. Excuse me, has something happened? Where were you? What were you doing? Hey, don't ask her a question with more questions. I was the one asking you. I, fell from a rope bridge way back in the mountains. I think I passed out on the riverbed. I don't actually know what day it is. Today is June 22nd, 1983, Wednesday. That surprised me. Satoko pushed me off the bridge on Tuesday. That meant I'd been asleep on that riverbed for an entire day. Forgive me for asking again, but did something happen? Why is the SDF here? Is this a drill? Had my question been that difficult for him? None of the troopers would answer me. The one in the driver's seat, talking on his radio, turned on the vehicle. He turned the dial, and some broadcast station or another came in. I started to listen to the voice of a radio announcer I was familiar with. Was conducted at the Prime Minister's office. In regards to questions from the press that the SDF for not responding to the disaster promptly was directly related to this unprecedented, unheard-of catastrophe. Chief Cabinet Secretary Okuno had this to say. And so, I believe that once the SDF received the dispatch order from the prefectural governor, they responded promptly. According to him, the SDF was prompt to respond to the crisis after receiving their orders. He implied that it was the prefecture's responsibility for taking too long to comprehend the situation. When did the governor who requested the SDF dispatch actually become aware of the outbreak of such unprecedented catastrophe? And did he not invite further damage because of the time lost before he sent the request for disaster relief? In other words, because of bureaucracy? We are awaiting further investigation into this matter. That was Mr. Okada reporting from the Prime Minister's official residence. At this point, we can take another look at the political response following this disaster. In the middle of the night, between June 21st and June 22nd, a large-scale disaster broke out in Hinamizawa village. The details have not yet been investigated, but there was an eruption of volcanic gas from somewhere in the Hinamizawa area. The gas was relatively heavy, and as it spewed out, it began to flow. That flow went down along a small river and headed directly into Hinamizawa village. After a few hours, it had covered the entire region. So, you could say that this, if we're going to pretend that it's not he was unconscious and make-believing things. So if that's the case, then, and it's actually demons and stuff, which I would prefer it being, because that's more interesting, Rika died, right? And therefore the village was allowed to be ransacked by demons. So the gas is like the demons, right? It happened in the middle of the night, 2 to 4 a.m. Every home and household in the village was afflicted. With most of the residents asleep, it is thought they died without noticing. The catastrophe striking in the middle of the night caused its detection to come too late. but there was still one small opportunity to have noticed it. 3 a.m. A news dealer shop in Okinomiya sent a vehicle carrying the morning newspaper to its branch office in Hinamizawa. Usually, the shop would be contacted upon the vehicle's arrival, but this morning that didn't happen. The news dealer's shop made repeated calls but got no response. The shopkeeper sent his eldest son to check on things, but they lost contact with him as well. It is extremely regrettable. If they had contacted the police or fire department, it is highly possible this situation would have turned out more positively. At the very least, it's possible that a portion of the village might have been saved from a tragic annihilation. 6 a.m. Residents in areas in the same region began continuously calling 119 to report the smell of rotten eggs, dizziness, nausea, and headaches. And also a rotten egg smell is sulfur and demons. The fire department received the same reports, all from the same confined region. They speculated a truck loaded with chemicals may have gotten into an accident and reported it to the local police. 6:30 a.m. Contact was lost with a patrol car on duty in the Hinamizawa area after the officer reported the smell of rotten eggs. The local police considered the possibility of a large-scale disaster involving highly lethal gas and reported it to the prefecture and prefectural police at 7:15 a.m. 8 a.m. The governor was traveling to nearby prefectures for inspection, so in accordance with regulations, the prefectural environmental disaster prevention chief was provisionally escalated to Director General and set up disaster countermeasure office. However, without contacting the governor, the countermeasures came too late. As has recently been pointing out by citizens groups, his trip with honorary Diet members to inspect other prefectures was based solely on good relations, and as rumors they preoccupied themselves with a drinking party. Sources closer to him claimed the governor had been drinking all night and gone to sleep in a drunken state. He was completely drunk when the environmental chief phoned him as well, and apparently could not get him to pay any attention to the matter. And so it took about another hour for the governor to sober up, gain an understanding of the situation, and gather information. Though not as extreme as the governor's case, the environmental chief who became director general in the governor's absence will likely also be questioned about his negligence. In addition, without any procedures in place on the prefecture's side that predicted catastrophes this massive, they would always react too late, and that ended up being fatal. 9:12 a.m. On the advice of the prefectural police, the governor requested a disaster relief mission from the SDF. By the time the chemical defense unit, equipped with protective equipment, arrived on the scene, 8 hours had already passed since the incident's outbreak. Whatever the case may be, it was unfortunate this happened while everyone was sleeping in the middle of the night. Had the same disaster occurred during the day, it would have likely been different. All Han households in Hinamizawa village region were wiped out. There were over 1,000 victims. The SDF is still confirming the situation on the ground, but their results are predicted to only increase that number. Here with us in the studio today is Dr. Fujiwara, a professor at Fuji University, who is well acquainted with volcanic disasters. I like that his name is Fujiwara, because Fuji's a volcano. All right. Doctor, can such a sudden and horrible outburst of poisonous gas actually happen? It isn't at all unusual for this to happen right around craters at least. Japan is a volcanic nation, and so many active volcanoes. There is always a danger of hazardous gas around any of these craters, and it's generally a rule among mountain climbers to not go near them. Does this mean the rotten egg smell that visited Hinamizawa was a normal sort of gas from volcanic craters? Judging by how it smelled like rotten eggs, we think it was hydrogen sulfide, a gas seen particularly frequently in accidents compared to other volcanic gases. If it is dense, it becomes extremely dangerous. Hinamizawa village is very far from the craters of any volcanoes. Can hydrogen sulfide be generated even from a place not close? I don't know all the details, so I can't say anything concrete,
but in other countries there are records of gas eruptions due to magma buildup under hot springs. It is extremely rare, but it is possible for such a thing to happen even in a region not near craters. Thank you very much, Doctor. We appear to have an announcement from the Japan Defense Agency. Miss Morikawa, are you there?
Yes, I'm at the Japan Defense Agency. The agency has just made an appointment regarding the source of the Hinamizawa gas disaster. Analysis from the Ground Self-Defense Force, Department of Chemistry, has found that gas was a mixture of carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide.
Miss Morikawa, do you know whether the gas is still erupting or spreading to nearby areas?
According to the SDF's 9th Division, who are currently engaged in a rescue operation at Hinamizawa, the gas density is steadily decreasing. They've announced that the damage will not spread. However, it does not change the fact that surrounding areas are still in danger, and that very strict observation must be maintained.
That was Morikawa from the Japan Defense Agency. And now we have a report on the state of those who have been made to evacuate to the Okinomiya area. Shimoshinozaki Elementary School is one of the evacuation sites, and we are currently have a reporter on scene.
Wait, what? Inside the jeep, clambering and bouncing along the rough road, none answered my muttered question. An unprecedented catastrophe had destroyed Hinamizawa in a single night? Where was Hinamizawa anyway? Someplace deep in the mountains, right? Name of places I've heard about on the radio were always like that. They were all places I'd never heard of, much less than knew the locations. Wiped out? What does that mean? Don't they usually say how many died and how many were injured? How many people were alive? Where did everyone evacuate to? Eventually, we came into view of Coach's clinic. For the first time, I saw the flag of Japan hanging out on the pole outside. Japan's circular sun hung down as though exhausted. Many SDF tents were set up in the clinic's big parking lot. Many strict security vehicles were parked there as well. When they saw the jeep coming, men in white clothing and gas masks came running out of the clinic, frantic, carrying a stretcher. "You're going to be all right. How do you feel? Can you walk?" "Yes." Ah. Because of my owls, they forced me to lay in the stretcher anyway. People who seemed like doctors were looking at me and notifying others of my condition via radio. Multiple wounds, high possibility of fractures and internal damage. Large laceration in the head, pupils normal, but even without bleeding from the fundus, brain damage is still possible. And then, from the clinic entrance, people lying on stretchers were brought outside to replace me. Judging by their clothing, they were from Hinamizawa. I don't understand this sentence. And that's how I knew they were victims. They brought the stretchers in front of a truck. 2 troops, holding shoulders and legs like some kind of baggage, picked them up and threw them inside the trunk. What? Ah! In the trunk of the truck, people's bodies piled in heaps. They were like baggage, and that told me there were already nothing but shells. At that moment, I remembered all those colorful sacks filling the trunks, and then lined up in the schoolyard like a fish market. Hundreds of empty shells. Corpses. Corpses, 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 corpses. Corpses, 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 corpses. You jackasses! Don't just throw the victims in like that! They lived here! The troops carrying the sacks answered me with a humble salute. The world didn't need this insane version of Hinamizawa. My final wish, again, was granted. I didn't understand anything anymore. None of it mattered. I wished. I cursed. And then it happened the next day. Then please, tomorrow morning, let me die. That insane night is still going on. Please. Please end it. Hey, he's lost consciousness. Shout his name, quickly. Maibara, can you hear me? If you can hear me, just blink. Maibara! Maibara! Suddenly, the world didn't matter to me anymore. I wasn't interested in their cries. His breathing stopped. Get his respiratory tract open. Use CPR. Make him live. Damn it, damn it. No more dead people. Nobody deserves to die. Don't kill him. Don't kill him. I could hear the voices of a man crying and screaming in my ears. Nobody deserves to die? Those words came from his heart. They were so commonplace. And they soaked into mine as well. Maybe it was a mistake to take someone's life, even if it was to save Satoko. If this is the price I had to pay, this horrible tragedy, then this is a little much, Oyashiro. Why did you never punish me? Come to think of it, Satoko said something. Oyashiro's actual curse never goes for the target, but kills everyone they love before that. Oyashirosama's curse. It was a convenient excuse I told myself at the very end, that it wasn't my curse that destroyed it, but Oyashirosama. Given that I was in a stretcher, this next bit might have been obvious. But last of all, I realized one thing. Yeah. Today, I had not heard those footsteps following me, even once. And now, I was liberated. As the cries of the Higurashi I couldn't have been hearing filled my mind. Their cheerful ensemble was the only funeral march I had. Interesting that it's under the demon swamp. That's interesting. Damn. Wait, he's alive? Why does he always get to live? No, he died in the first one, right? He got the drug. Oh. Oh, interesting. Possibly committed suicide, strangled to death, went missing. Katsuya went missing. Iri committed suicide. Furude possibly murdered. Reina died. Mion died. Oryo, I don't know. Satoko. Sangtepe. I don't know who those people are. Oh, parents. Oh, Tomita Kumura. Chi. And died at victim's hospital. Shion-sana. Oh my god. Oh, that happened in the original one. Keichi attempted suicide at victim's hospital. Alright, well this was book 3. It's technically called chapters, but I'm saying books because it makes more sense to me that way. So I really don't know. I really, really, really hope it's not a dream or he's in a coma. So the things we could take from this one is that, and we're actually getting Rika in the next book, which if Rika is Oyashiro, which is what that thing said, then that would make sense as to why she had the drug in the second book. In the second book, they found her body with the drug. But the interesting thing is that in the second book, I want to hear the tape. Is he crazy? says arbitrary? Uh-oh, don't say impossible. See? He's crazy. There are people who shouldn't exist. Ha 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 ha. They doubt that it's Keichi, and they doubt that it's... So if it's not Keichi, is it the demon that's possessing him? Or Satoshi? It does sound really crazy like this, doesn't it? Uh-oh. Oh man, he's crazy. When did the guy die? If I'm in top form. Oh my God. He went crazy. The interesting part is so we can explain a few things, okay? If we try to rationalize this, if we try to rationalize this and make it a real thing, I don't know why I can't really think. He woke up in the garbage dump, didn't he? Isn't that kind of a ways from Hinamizawa? At least the picture was the garbage dump. Ooh, that's creepy. I know that laugh was supposed to be creepy, but it was more silly and it completely took away that ending. Now I want to check.